Good evening and thank you for joining us on the last edition of the program Capital Markets. That's for this year 2018. I'm Temple Ashaju. It's been an interesting year packed with so much activities around market operations, trading, the yield curve, and of course regulations and its implementation of policies across the debts equities market here in Nigeria, Africa's largest economy. Now, on the show this evening, we'll take out time to review capital market activities, all of these trends, and of course, that will be over the major securities performances, major securities that are tradable here in the Nigerian capital market. But before we engage in that, let's remind you of how the markets finished off this week. And we start with equities again, which is number one for us. Equities market finished this week after a huge sense of zigzag trading during the week, where we saw 3 days trading. And of course, sell pressure, profit taking, and portfolio rebalancing was the trend for this week as local investors increased their buy side in the market. Now, we know that the all-share index ended positive 0.86% with an equity capitalization of 11.337 trillion naira. And activity level was really on the high side. This week, we had 3.129 billion in terms of volume of securities traded and valued at 14.348 billion naira. We had 10,394 deals in summary. If you look at the sectors, we had the banking sectors closing positive, 385 basis points. The insurance segment was down 1.05%. Consumer goods was up 12.73%, while the oil and gas was positive, some 5.94%. Industrial goods dipped some 12.34%. And I look at the unlisted securities market, which is the NASDOTC. You have the unlisted securities index closing this week, 294 basis points positive, with the USI settling at 733.35. Market capitalization was 509.69 billion naira. We had a decline in the volume of transactions, 75.35 million units of shares traded this week, and that was down 14% from the 88.11 million that we had last week. Now, at the fixed income side of the markets, bonds market was positive in the outgone week as yields declined across most maturities. We saw buying sentiment observed as benchmark yields for declined, basically 21 basis points week on week. We saw demands toward the long-dated bonds, such as the ones you have right now on screen that were traded yesterday on the markets, at the secondary markets, 18th of March 2036, the 2024, and of course 2027. We had just 27 deals yesterday, Friday, and that's valued at 6.72 billion naira. In terms of treasury bills, we've got CBN auctioning some T-bills worth 420 billion naira this week, and that was through the secondary markets. We had the outflows partly offset the inflows from the matured treasury bills worth 551.36 billion naira. Yields at the secondary markets yesterday declined 13 basis points week on week, despite the tightened liquidity. Yesterday, we had 177 deals in the markets. That's the fixed income market, the FMDQ OTC, representing the secondary side of the market, and of course, a couple of those bonds tradable at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. But for the data before us, 177 deals for the FMDQ yesterday, valued at 51.94 billion naira. That's for treasury bills only. Now, it's been a very, very interesting year in the Nigerian capital market. Securities opened positive, having closed the previous year impressive as one of the top 5 performing markets globally. However, in the second half of the year, we saw foreign investors taking profits, moving out of the market. That's as a result of the risk of sentiments in emerging markets, and of course, the fact that the 2019 general elections activities was beginning to take shape in the local space. Basically, to review these market activities for the year 2018 with us this evening is the Chief Executive of AfriInvest Securities, Ayodeji Ebo. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
It's really the last edition of the show. We had you in November talking about the unlisted securities market. Well, then here we are now to talk about the activities in the market this year. Now let's begin with the debt side of the market and look at the fact that federal government talked about externalizing its debt portfolios this year more. How would you say that panned out this year?
Yes, I think the fixed income market, it's a game of two halves. When you look at the first half, on the back of government initiative or strategy to reduce in terms of its debt burden, restructured, reduced domestic borrowings. And when you look at in terms of the statistics, when you compare in terms of for FGM bonds, about 600 billion naira was borrowed in Nigeria domestically relative to when you compare it to 2017, when you had about 1.5 trillion naira. And when you look at in terms of the external debt, about $5.3 billion was raised, and that's converting that's about 1.6 trillion naira. So that objective in terms of reducing domestic borrowing was achieved because government raised just 50% of what was raised in 2017 domestically, and most of the funds were raised from Eurobond. However, you also look at the second half, looking especially for the treasury bills market. You saw that yield improved significantly, and yield is currently at the around 17%, which which very attractive to a lot of investors. And you also want to recall, if you look at in terms of the bond market, we saw significant sell-off on the back of contagion effect from emerging markets. We're selling significantly in the bond market, which led to yields almost touch about 16% before coming down around the 15% levels now. So within the debt